Bom, boa tarde a todas e todos. Nós voltamos agora para a última sessão do 9º Simpósio Nacional de História das Populações, e eu fico muito contente de estar aqui nessa mesa, ao lado do professor Angelo Torre. É um prazer e uma honra, um piacere e onore essere qua. E realmente ficamos muito contentes da possibilidade do professor Angelo Torre poder estar conosco nesta sessão. Eu vou fazer uma apresentação muito rápida dos trabalhos, das áreas que o professor tem atuado, mas quero chamar a atenção que tem trabalhos muito importantes e que tem a ver justamente com o tema da conferência que ele vai apresentar hoje, Spatializing the Village. Portanto, o professor Angelo Torre é historiador italiano, atua na área de história moderna, trabalha muito com história local, práticas jurídicas, religiosidade popular, relações entre Estado e sociedade, participou da fundação e coordenou o Seminário Permanente de História Local, que propõe esse importante diálogo entre a microhistória e a história territorial. É importante que o professor tenha uma participação muito importante naquilo que a gente chama do giro espacial, né? Essa atenção que a história está dando muito para a questão do espaço, como trabalhar o espaço e como incorporar isso numa perspectiva de história social. Tem uma participação muito importante no grupo da microhistória italiana, né? Foi membro da direção da revista Quaderni Storici, que é um marco para quem quer conhecer, né, toda a contribuição da microhistória italiana. Trabalhou e colaborou com historiadores também, que são referências, como a professora Simona, com outros nomes que são icônicos da microhistória. Giovanni Levi, Eduardo Grandi, enfim. Essa aposta da interdisciplinaridade é importante e nós vamos ter todo o prazer de ouvir o professor Angelo Torre. Como nós combinamos, cerca de 40 minutos, 45 minutos, e depois os minutos finais para a intervenção de todos. Nós vamos usar, o professor Angelo vai falar em inglês, e nós vamos usar a ferramenta do PowerPoint com a tradução para facilitar um pouco a vida de vocês. Thank you very much.
Well, let me thank very much all the people here, and especially Professor Anna Volpi-Scott, who invited me to this very interesting and lively seminar. So let me briefly explain what's the subject of this speech. Spatializing is, I have to speak of spatializing and of hamlets. Spatializing in here is not geolocalized. I have nothing against geolocalization, but what I'm trying to say is something slightly different, that is to have spatialized glasses to look at sources and historical and social reality. The second term is Hamlet. Hamlet, as I said, it's a nightmare if you look in the international database, because the reply is Shakespeare. No, so you have to say Hamlet, but not Shakespeare, and you become, I mean, foolish. Hamlet is a section of a village, something very locally named in Italy, as I think in Portuguese. In Italian, that's borgata, villa. It's a number of local names, and it seems to me that in Portuguese that
Povoado, povoação. Chegamos a um acordo na hora do almoço.
But I show you one so you can understand what I'm speaking of. The third thing is that what I'm saying is, stems from a research on an ethnographic historical research on commons in the northern western part of Italy, Piedmont, Lombardy, but you are not sensed to know the geography of Italy. I hope to be enough exotic for a Brazilian audience. So let's go. That's what I said. And also the glasses that I'm trying to put in on your eyes is not the space in general, but it's a topographical space. So it's very, let's say, concrete, very manageable in a way. Spatialize the village or the community. That means in this speech to see the tensions between spatial and social units. And the Hamlet is the actor of this. Thank you so much. The name of the book, the title of the book by Biazzo is, Biazzo is a well-known, it's a master in the literature of Alpine anthropology. It has a strong line of merits, but it doesn't understand space. In the Alagna village he studied is fragmented in more than 10 hamlets, and he names them, but he doesn't take them into account. That's my point with my friend. we studied in the same university. Okay. I'm starting from a critique of the concept of a community as used both in the social sciences and by historians. And this is a list that we will, the criticism of sources, the history of law, the historical ecology, and spatial time, blah, 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 changed our way of looking at documentation. Well, the critique of the sources, as Simona said this morning, it changed the approach starting from the 90s, the approach to sources. That is that sources are, not by all historians, of course, but by a number of historians, are seen as not as description of reality, but as construction of reality. And because especially I'm an historian of an ancien regime, of the old regime, in the old regime, but all over the 19th century, sources are used in the courts. So when they wrote something, was thought to be used in the court. The second critique of the sources is that we have a social gaze which is based on the 19th century sociology. But if we look at the old regime societies, we have to have different glasses, that is topographical glasses. And that's the great lessons by the English local history, which is now very in a deep crisis, but because of the global history. And the book I'm referring to is William Hoskins' English Local History, which is, I still think, a fantastic book. I shared an experience when I was teaching in Genoa University. Eduardo Grandi and Diego Moreno created a standing seminar of local history, which tried to apply this methodological devices. The second element for a critique of the concept of community is the legal history community look at the community. Until the end of the 80s, social history was totally different and far and indifferent to legal problems, to the legal dimensions of social reality. And thanks especially to a great Portuguese legal historian, Antonio Manuel España, now we think of the countryside and also old regime societies as societies in which jurisdiction intertwine, entangle. And so you have in the same village or in the same quarter of a town, you have different legal systems, different legal courts, and people were able to to confront and to manage this difference, this let's say plurality of well, that's the España. The real book of España is Vésperas do Leviatán, but this old book is the first time a historian tried to manage legal documentations. The third critique to the concept of a community is what we call the British historical ecology. That is the historical ecology which stems from a genius, Oliver Rackham, who was a botanist and who used to portray trees. His first books, the Ancient Woodlands and then the History of the Countryside, are portraits of trees. And he's discovered that trees are not natural, that trees are shaped by man. Why? Because changing the quantity of light, you change the production of grass. And so you can use the wood, the forest, as pasture. And and he studied woods around Cambridge. He was teaching in that's very important because they centered the analysis of village from the corn and from the cereal cultivation to the periphery, to the wood. And the wood were also commons to the people. It's a rotation of matrices to understand the traditional, let's say, the ancient countryside. Then we had, in the 90s especially, a so-called spatial turn, which is very ambiguous, but was very important because it introduced, I'm thinking especially of Dennis Cosgrove and Susan Rao, which I quote here. They tried to introduce a relative notion of space. That is, to see space through the eyes of historical actors. This kind of analysis has not been, as far as I know, really applied to villages, to the country, but mostly to urban situation. Then, I mean, the spatial turn has been important because it has allowed to analyze spatially religion. And we will see the villages we are talking of are split in different special religious dimensions, ritual dimensions, not only the brotherhood, historiography has studied maybe too much brotherhood, but we have chaplaincies, we have simple benefices, we have oratories in this Poblação. And this changed our image of the most important institution. This is the parish. The village is a parish. The parish is something which federate different special religious institutions. And then the most important, the consideration, a new gaze on local, what are local settlements. Traditionally, geographers, especially French geographers, who studied very deeply French and European countryside, distinguish between two different and only two different types of villages: nucleated, that is very compact, and dispersed settlement. That's the risk of every typology, is to cancel the middle. So we have a number of situations in which the village is not simply nucleated, but we have a fragmentation, or we can say a polycentricity of settlements. That's my problem. And that's the way I try to use to analyze commons. Commons are not the common people institution, but that's local institution. That is, they are institutions for the management of vegetal resources, woods, and so on, by segments, sections of the village space. That is a dimension of commons, especially in France, but also in Italy, in which the section, the communes, that is the segments of the village, own commons and not the commune. The official data are 1/3, but the villages claim that 3/1 common are owned by section de commune. In Italy, the frazione is the same dimensions, but we don't have the total reckoning. So let me now begin the spatialization of the community that I tried to propose. Or the hamlet is an underestimated scientific object. We have an absence of discussion of the hamlet in the social sciences, because social science has been obsessed with the peasant community. And there has been, as I said, a geographical misunderstanding opposing clustered and dispersed settlements instead of study the fragmented settlements. There is also an error by the great geographer Albert de Mangeon, who realized this problem, but it spent the life to calculate the coefficient of dispersion in France in the different regions. So what I'm talking about is a neglected dimension. It is a polycentric or fragmented settlement. There is an important exception to what I'm saying. That is a fantastic article by Clifford Geertz in '59 on the form and the variation in Balinese village structure, in which he studied how villages seems something, homogeneous, and we say that's a Balinese village, but they are strictly different one from another. It's a fantastic Well, I'm referring here to the Kingdom of Sardinia in Southern Europe. And that's a very interesting case, because there is a fiscal reform at the beginning of the 18th century, where the state tried to classify and to make typologies of commons. And what is interesting, that the officials of the state in Turin, which was the capital of the kingdom, speak of commons in terms of productivity. This wood is useless because it's unproductive. And the people in the villages opposed everywhere, but sometimes speaking clearly of a different way to see, to look at commons. Who has the right to access to commons? And they say, I make this an example by a village near Turin. They say a common can be the property of a single hamlet, of two hamlets and the commune, of all the people passing by. And that's a very important statement by this village. Oh, that's an image. I don't think it's very clear from this distance, of a fragmented polycentric settlement. You see oh my God, no, the red dots are hamlets, but no, but better. So you see these dots. You have 100 of dots in some, and these dots are hamlets. You have in red 10 to 11 houses, and then you have here, and that's very important, you have a church. The cross is a church. Why this is so important? Because if there is a church, you cannot say that these houses are owned by a simple kin group. The church is something public. There has been a discussion on what hamlets historical were. This is among microhistorians, especially Edoardo Grandi, who is the founder of microhistory, who studied the hamlets of a Ligurian village of Cervo, but especially Gérard de Lille, who is a French, who studied the southern Italy and used ecclesiastical records, and he studied censuses, ecclesiastical censuses, status animarum, and he studied status animarum in a special way, realizing that a list of names can be depicted, can be designed on a map, and can become a map. And so he reconstructed the hamlets of the Diocese of Salerno in the mid-80s, very important. And then a number of studies. I have not time. We can speak of 4 or 5 different aspects of the hamlet's life. The first one is the juridical aspect. We have a bestseller, Nicolaus Lozeus, in 1604, wrote a book who was a bestseller. He had 20s re-edition until the end of the 18th century, and he recognized the existence of hamlets. He called them villa, And he says that that villa is a group of at least 5 houses. Let's think, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but 5 houses means 1 grandfather, 2 sons, and 2 or more grandsons. So it's a very special social formation. No? And he says, well, we have to recognize rights to these people. He's interested in this because he thinks that he's a creditor. He finances communities, so he thinks that it's easier for him to have money back if he recognizes in rights. And what is interesting is that until the end of the 19th century, if you go to the historical dictionaries, which were a great fashion of historical erudition, you see that antiquarians who compiled these dictionaries never forget to list the hamlets in a village, because these are the unities with the 20th century. But for instance, Italian censuses right now make the list of the hamlets. Of course, there is I introduced it, a social aspect of hamlet. That is the kin structure. And especially Bernard Derouet in France studied very deeply the kin structure. But if we go and study to the notaries, the notarial acts, we see that, for instance, in wills, testamento, we see that the heirs of who is writing down the will have to keep fire, place, and arms alike. That is the problem of a succession. No, implies a number of characters. That is, focum. The house has to be open, lived, place, because the fact to live there gives access to commons, and then to arms. Why arms? It's not obvious. Why arms, eleemosinas, give right? That's a regime of indivision of male. That's the discovery of Bernard Derouet. These kin groups are not, they don't divide heritage. So let's go to the problem of arms. These hamlets have a redistributive life. We have extended distributions to closest relatives, that's to neighbors and relatives. And a number of assets are distributed. Salt. Salt is important because it is important for animals, for breeding animals. But also food for men and women, bread, wine, and so on, and walks to the clerk, but also clogs, zoccoli, okay? And then this, over time, changes. For instance, in the 18th century, there are foundations for schools, there are grants for pupils, and then to pay the doctor, and so on. But until the end of the 18th century, distribution of salt, bread, wine, etc., is the center. And there are cases in which the hamlet defend the communalization of the charity, and there's an institution which is very understudied, the Confraria, brotherhood, but it's not the same name. Confraternita is in Italian. That's Confraria is a Latin confratria, which is a territorial institution and is dedicated usually to the Holy Spirit. I think that Portuguese are well accustomed with this because in Portugal they are very, very important, also in the Azores, and I think also in Brazil, but I never. What is a confraria of the Holy Spirit? Is a soup. Is a soup of chickpeas that is of come si dice in ceci in portoghese? No? No? In the day of Pentecost, Whitsun. And this soup has to be distributed to all inhabitants of the hamlet, but sometimes of those who pass by. And we are so lucky in this part of Italy to have a bishop, Monsignor Bascapè, who was a pupil of San Carlo Borromeo, but he had a really ethnographic interest, who describes these soups, these suppers, dinners, I don't know. And he says that he says, literally quoted, for us religious men, to eating together means making charity. So to eat together real lives the hamlet. And is exactly what the anthropologist Arion Padorai call the production of locality. Locality is not something which is given. A locality is something which has to be managed, maintained. Confraria of the Holy Spirit had an iconography, which is the classic iconography that's of the 12th century. That's the classic image. It's an image of the Trinity, but it's horizontal instead of being vertical. That's the house of the Confraria in the mountains in Piedmontese mountain. The Holy Spirit is something which the pneuma, they call, which legitimates and inspires assemblies, meetings, and especially political meetings. That's the political meeting of Toulouse in the middle of the 15th century. But we have different way of depicting the name is triandric, three men, Trinity. That's an hamlet. Gifa is an hamlet. That's Blins. It's a valley. It's an hamlet. And this fresco dates from 1758. It's very late. The church didn't like this kind of Trinity, but it did not prescribe. It's tolerated. Hamlet has also a religious life. It has a chapel, and in chapel, the leading king groups finance masses, a lot of masses, and especially they try to found chaplaincies, benefices, and to create parish. The hamlet lives to become a parish. Sometimes it is successful, sometimes, especially, often, very often, not, of course. It's not only a Catholic institution, because Alan Everett, studying in the United Kingdom, found out that the peripheral chapels in the villages were non-conformist chapels, and so there were kin groups managing this peripheral churches. There is also an administrative aspect of the hamlet, that not only a parish is the main aim of the hamlet, but it's to become a commune. There are secular 100 years long battle of the most important hamlets to become independent commune. That implies the division of the commons, and that it's a nightmare, and it never succeeds. So we have a situation in which the hamlets are independent, but the commons are extend over a number of different hamlets. And so we have a tension between peripheral hamlets and what is becoming the central village, and is becoming a municipal institution, that is a commune. So we have what we can imagine as a paisible countryside is full of tensions because of the management of the commons, which are impossible to be divided. Conclusions. Yeah, I can't believe it. So if we use a topographical scale, we can see tensions, social tensions, rather than homogeneity. The shared objective of people is to maintain household continuity through the obligation to keeping fire, place, and arms alive. And this generates a number of tensions. Tensions between relatives over the division of property, tensions between confrarie, associations that manage the rituals of distribution, tensions between peripheral places of worship, chapels, and parishes. Le curé, the parish priests, are not fan of chapels, because they subtract resources to the functions. And we have tensions between different settlements over the commune formation. So we have tensions between peripheral settlements and what is becoming the central village, where, let's say, the parish church and other institutions, the school, for instance. And we have conflicts over the management and ownership of the commons. That's the last. So we can see from this consideration, this kind of data and comments, that what we call the community is not given, but is a construction, and is produced by ritual. And what it seems to me very important to say is that the need to maintain the continuity of the household, or the family, imply the institutionalization of charity and devotion. So you need to have a chapel unit, that chapel becomes a parish, and you have to manage this parish maybe through your nephew, or your cousin, or your neighbor, no? Or these tensions we can imagine naively, I think, that these tensions are against the state. But that's not true. The problem is to have a chapel, is to have a small common house, and so on. So it's a very ambiguous, it's a very tended relationship, but it's not. It's open to different solutions. And that's true that central institutions, the state, the landlord, which I didn't mention, and the church try to control this peripheral situation. But it's true that the peripheral situation has something to give, something to exchange. That is the commons management, the arms, and the how to say, the order in the management of things. That's the price that central authorities have to pay to manage. So maybe we have to rethink the structure of countryside. It's more complex than we imagined through the historical and sociological knowledge of the end of the 19th century, when Marc Bloch and other important historians made the foundations, put the foundations of our idea of history of the countryside. That's all. I thank you very much. You have been very...
Thank you very much, Angelo. It was very, very interesting. And before pass the word for the public, I was thinking, when you was talking, I was thinking about all the challenges that we have to apply all these reflections that you made in a space also complex like Brazilian society, colonial Brazilian society, with groups of Portuguese, colonial people, enslaved people, poor people, and the relationship and the tensions are incredible, huge when we think about our society. But it was very, very challenging to apply this, think about apply.
Yeah, and I didn't mention the religious orders, which here are not more important than in Europe, but I mean, the importance here of religious orders. And religious orders make space. They strictly, physically make space. So this consideration, I think, that apply also in a different way. I'm not implying that I know the solution for the analysis of religious order, but I think that they build territory. Tamar Herzog's book on frontiers shows that orders build territory in the Amazon, in the Amazonia.
Yes.
So it's very important.
Ok. Thank you very much. Eu abro para todos que quiserem fazer algum comentário. Diego. Temos ainda 10 minutinhos, dá para fazer uma rodada.
Angelo, very interesting presentation and very provoking. Whenever I was just listening your presentation, I think that your history of the evolution from the settlements, you want to refer it in that way, is going in parallel with the formation of the state, and how the kind of bureaucracy, distribution of power, or the distribution of communications is running through time. In this change between the hamlets to the commune or to the municipality, probably some of the hamlets were playing a stronger role than other hamlets within the commune, within the municipality. And probably there is generating also tensions between the groups. And the other thing is related with commons. There is quite a lot of work done in the Cambridge group and so on the commons. And the change in economic history, the change of the use of the commons to other kind of agricultural exploitation of the land and so on is probably playing a role on how this change is taking place through history. So these are the two things that I find very interesting, because I don't know in which way the role of increasing communication between hamlets and between a space in general is producing this new distribution of or new structure of the state.
Well, oh, thank you. It's a very interesting question. Two questions. Let's say state is interested in having some money back. So, speaking, the way in which money is collected is not so important. But it's true that feudalism, for instance, as a stronghold on this. So we have to rethink feudal power, state power in these peripheral dimensions. But it's true that something has to be said. The state is interested in extracting resources. Strictly speaking, the way in which it can be done is of course it's important. It is a symbolic commitment of authority, and so on. But strictly speaking, the resources are important, and we can see small hamlets trying and succeeding in winning autonomy from a more important village, maybe because of client relationships with the court, whatever. But they succeed, and that's incredible. Small household groupings makes battle for tens of years to become autonomous municipalities. That's the common is a night, because the old how to say territorial institution, peripheral territorial institutions are varied, very different to the kingdom of difference, and so trying to homogenize this institution is a real nightmare. And so are local equilibria, which are important, and there are single story. I'm trying to reconstruct dozens of these stories, which are different. They are, as Clifford Geertz said in 59, they are variation on a theme. There's a theme that it is how to distribute commons when we split. That's the problem. But there are so different solutions that I can't really say that I have a model to suggest. That's the problem. And there are cases. So what can I say is this: when a solution can be found, and is found and brought to the capital or to the provincial intendant, that's okay. If they can't find out a solution, the commons are lost. In a 50 to 60 years, there's no more common. I have an example. I can't speak right now, but there are stories in which the commons in the mountains. I mean, it's not a small wood close to the river. There are alpeggi immensi, and they're lost. So it's a very important, and so there are different calculations. The provincial intendants tried to but it's not so simple and not so easy to get the solution it's very complex, as we know, very complex problems of division, sharing. Io uccisi.
Io avrei... Spiace, sono un po'... There is another question that is important when we think about colonial Brazilian society. You mentioned the importance of the church. It's central. But for us, it's more important because most of times the church arrives first than the state. The colonial power only after arrive, and all the hamlet is more or less organized, and and in one environment totally different, and it's very interesting to think about this.
And if I can add a small thing, is that when we think of church, we think of parishes, of bishoprics, but there are religious orders, which here are maybe, from what I can say, are more important than bishoprics. And there are not only Jesuits. There are Augustinians, there are Capuchins, there are fathers of the Mercedes, there are the Carmelitans. I mean, and nobody studies this. Nobody studies, because Jesuit archives are very simple. They are entitled to the father. So you go to Rome, you have the father, let's say Suarez, blah blah, and you have your material. But religious orders archives, I tried to study them, but they are a nightmare. And that's the real difficulty, because we can know of Jesuits, but there are not only Jesuits. That's the problem. But I agree that the church, the basis to make a commune of a hamlet is the chapel. Yes. Without chapel, no commune. So people invest in chapels. They are enormously important, and in Holy Spirit. So let me say one thing. The capital of the Kingdom of Sardinia, Turin, maybe you have heard about this small city. But anyway, at the beginning of the 16th century, he had 10,000 inhabitants. So it was a small city. But he had 21 confrarias of the Holy Spirit who distributed the chickpeas in Pentecost. What's the meaning of that? What's the meaning of that? That's to transmit heritage. You have to have a fire, place, arms. That are arms.
I studied in my PhD, Antero knows, a small hamlet, aldeia, Santiago de Conf. About 1,500 inhabitants. Five conferences.
Yes. Yes. That's I mean, the redistribution of resources. There are commons, there are confrarias, brotherhoods, and there are also convents, nunneries. They distribute.
Yes.
We always think of them as accumulation, but they distribute. And that's a social, political function which has to be, in my view, still to be studied. I mean, we don't know deeply this kind of mechanism, that's these systems.
Ok, thank you very much. Eu queria agradecer todo mundo que permaneceu, né, nesses 3 dias. Encerramento não tem encerramento formal, né? Antes de fazer o encerramento, como nós tínhamos dito, a BEP ofereceu um prêmio para aquela apresentação de jovem pesquisador, e eu gosto muito dessa ideia de jovem pesquisador. Eu acho que a gente precisa incentivar, eu estou vendo aqui um monte de jovens muito promissores, que acompanharam aqui o nosso seminário, e a Tati, que é a secretária-geral, eu vou pedir para ela fazer o anúncio, né? Os coordenadores das sessões se reuniram e vão indicar uma pessoa, um jovem ou uma jovem pesquisadora. Eu vou dar meu autógrafo agora.
Bom, não sei fazer suspense, tá? Então, certificamos. Bom, em nome da BEP, primeiro, a gente agradece a participação de todos e todas nas 6 sessões temáticas, né? Foram sessões temáticas interessantíssimas, tanto que elas tiveram que ser paralelas pelo tanto de apresentadores que a gente teve. Então, queria agradecer a participação de todo mundo, né? É um prêmio para incentivá-los a participar da BEP, né? Um espaço de diálogo, onde o GT População e História tem uma grande importância também na trajetória de todo o evento. Ano que vem, teremos o nosso evento, em 2026, esperamos todos vocês lá, comemoraremos os 50 anos da BEP, então será um marco muito especial. Então, certificamos que Hugo Matheus Rocha Aguiar recebeu o prêmio de melhor apresentação em sessão temática com o título de Norte a Norte, Famílias Mazaganeses e a Colonização da Capitania do Cabo Norte, 1769-1778, na categoria Jovem Pesquisador, no 9º Simpósio Nacional de História das Populações, que ocorreu entre 17 a 19 de setembro, em 2025, na Unicamp.
Obrigada, Tati. Tem um vídeo? Tá. Eles estão me informando aqui que tem um vídeo no final. Eu só queria fazer um comentário. O vencedor, que vem lá do Pará, eu queria fazer uma menção especial. Daniel Barroso, que trouxe o pessoal de Belém para cá, não foi de Kombi, mas a gente brincou que era uma Kombi, e a gente ficou muito, muito feliz de ter vocês. Quantos quilômetros é o Pará, para quem não conhece o Brasil? Quantos? 3.000 quilômetros, pessoal. Ele trouxe os alunos da graduação e da pós-graduação para vir para esse simpósio nosso. Então, eu estou muito feliz por todos os alunos, por todos os estudantes, e a gente espera ver vocês, né, no ano que vem na ABEP. Tá? E só lembrando que tem vários professores aqui que começaram como jovens pesquisadores no nosso GT População e História. Então, vocês têm futuro aqui, tá bom? Obrigada por terem participado.
Abaixar o que? O volume?
Acho que pode ser abaixar. Apagar aqui? É porque é vídeo, né? Acho que é melhor apagar aqui na frente, por causa do vídeo ou não? Tem do meu lado? Eu não vou saber. Não, ao contrário.
Pessoal, calma que o download
ao contrário.
Tá indo, vocês tenham paciência.
Não. Pode acho que acender do fundo, mas só esse daqui da...
A gente tenta, senão vocês aguentam pacientemente, tá?
Tá. Então tá bom, eu comento depois, só para fazer o agradecimento final.
Pode ir.
Pessoal, um minuto, porque eu preciso agradecer, e fiquei até emocionada. Né? Essa equipe é sensacional, é nota 10. Estou parecendo uma Isa. Não, realmente é um agradecimento final, né? Não só para os palestrantes que estiveram aqui, que aceitaram o nosso convite, os estudantes, né? Um agradecimento super especial para a comissão organizadora que ficou comigo, não desistiu de mim. Um agradecimento muito especial para o Tiago, para a Tati, para todos os estudantes, todos os alunos que estiveram aqui com a gente. Cara, isso é muito bonito. Só isso, obrigada, e a gente espera ter vocês sempre aqui perto da gente. Tá? A Unicamp ficou muito feliz, o NEPO ficou muito feliz, o IFCH, e a gente, Tiago, vamos dormir bem essa noite? Missão cumprida. Missione compiuta. Mission accomplished. Gostam bem, né, Tati? Obrigada, pessoal. Ah, só uma coisa. Esqueci de dizer que nós vamos ter uma confraternização na do Unicamp, 19 horas. 19 horas. Todo mundo está convidado para estar lá com a gente. E agora é para relaxar, porque todo mundo já trabalhou o que tinha que trabalhar. Tá bom? Todo mundo convidado para estar lá com a gente. Tá? Obrigada.